Dissecting the Body Snatchers, to understand the ancient parasite that wants to devour us all. The 1955 film Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which hit theaters in 1956, depicts a California town overrun by space-borne spores that grow into plant-like seed pods capable of replicating individual men and women and children, absorbing their memories and individual characteristics, and then eliminating the original person, leaving only the alien replica. The original written text version of the story, on which the film was based, ran as a 3-part serial in Collier's Weekly in 1954 and is in many ways better and more chilling than the 1955 film. I'll put links to those 3 segments. Part 1 ran in the 26th November 1954 Collier's. Part 2 ran in 10 December 1954, and Part 3 24 December 1954. The text version clears up many of the loose ends that were inexplicably missing from the film itself, details which make the metaphor shockingly urgent for the situation threatening the world today. Because you and I are living in a very real and deadly version of the body snatchers right this moment. And unless we realize the situation we're in and take action, the conclusion of the story will be far less happy and far more bleak than anything described in the text or the movie. In the 1954 version of the Body Snatchers, published in Collier's, author Jack Finney, who lived from 1911 to 1995, Jack Finney describes the spores that descend to Earth from outer space as growing into seed pods resembling fungal puffballs, light in weight, enmeshed with a fibrous network of yellowish veins. Inside the pod is a, quote, tangled, fluffy substance, grayish in color, thick and fluffy at first, but capable of compressing itself into more solid form as it absorbs moisture and energy from living beings in its proximity. When living matter comes near, or when the seed pods are placed near living matter, these invaders from space begin to form into a perfect replica of that living matter, slowly robbing the host of its vitality until, at the end of the process, the original organism collapses into dry dust-like fluff, and the interstellar parasite assumes the form of its victim. In a gripping scene found in the Collier's version but inexplicably left out of the 1955 film, Jack Finney has the character of a college biologist and botany professor who has actually already been replicated and replaced by one of the body snatchers, describe the details of the process to the first-person protagonist, the medical doctor Miles Bonnell. So here's the extended quote from this college professor, botanist, biologist, but he's been taken over and replicated by the body snatchers. So it's really a body snatcher replica that's talking. Quote, "The pods must fulfill their function, the function of all life everywhere, survival. Life exists throughout the universe, of course, but under conditions inconceivably different from ours. So, of course, the forms it takes are inconceivably different, too. Some of that life exists on planets immeasurably older than ours. What happens, Doctor, when an ancient planet slowly dies? Well, this life form on it must prepare. For what? For survival, for leaving that planet. To arrive where and when? There can be only one answer: universal adaptability to any and all other life forms, to any and all other conditions it might possibly encounter. These pods have achieved it. They are completely evolved life, its ultimate form, for they have the evolved ability to reform and reconstitute themselves into perfect duplication, cell for cell, of any life form they may encounter in whatever conditions that life has suited itself for. End quote. During this frightening discussion, the botany and biology professor, who has been replicated by this ultimate form of evolved life, reveals that he still retains the knowledge acquired by the professor before being assimilated, but that he now has the knowledge of the alien life form that replicated the former professor's body and turned the original to dust. As the conversation goes on, the replicated professor increasingly uses the terms you and yours to describe humanity, speaking from the perspective of the cold and uncaring, completely evolved life form that has come to this planet in order to devour it before moving elsewhere. Here's another extended quotation. Quote, 300 years ago, you doctors didn't even know blood circulated. You thought it was a motionless fluid like water in a sack. And brain waves are only a recent discovery. Brain waves, doctor. Actual electrical emanations from the brain in specific identifiable patterns, penetrating the skull to the outside to be picked up, amplified, and charted. You can sit and watch your own pattern on a screen. And not only the brain, but the entire body, every cell of it, emanates waves as individual as fingerprints. But you don't believe that, do you? Do you believe, though, that equally invisible waves can emanate from a room, travel silently through space, be picked up, and then echo every word, sound, and tone to be heard in that original room? Your grandfather wouldn't have, Dr. Bennell, but you do. You believe in radio. You even believe in television. Yes, Dr. Bennell, your body contains its own pattern. All living matter does. It is the very foundation of cellular life. For it is composed of the tiny electrical force lines that hold together the atoms that constitute your being. And therefore, it is a pattern, infinitely detailed, of the precise constitution of your body at any moment, altering with every breath you take and with every second of time in which your body infinitesimally changes, and the pattern can be taken from you. During sleep, the body is at a low ebb, and then the pattern can be slowly transferred, absorbed like static electricity from one body to another. And what happens to the original? The atoms that formerly composed you, once the electrical force lines are gone, are static, nothing, a pile of formless gray fluff. It can happen, does happen, and rather easily. And you know that it has happened and will happen to you. End quote. This disturbing explanation is completely absent from the film, as is the replicated professor's concluding statement describing other planets that had been devoured and turned to dust by the spaceborne invaders, and his declaration that, quote, but just now it's the Earth's turn. The pods live again briefly, and when the life on Earth is used up, the spores will move out into space once again, to drift for, it doesn't matter how long or to where. Eventually they'll arrive somewhere. They are the parasites of the universe, and they'll be the final survivors in it. End quote. While many theories have been put forward over the intervening 7 decades regarding what kind of metaphor might have been intended by these terrifying body snatchers, Jack Finney himself apparently claimed to have no intentions to make his story a metaphor for anything in particular. In his introduction to a, quote, revised and updated version of the original Collier story, printed in a 2005 edition as part of the Stephen King Horror Library, Stephen King quotes Jack Finney as saying, this is the quote from Stephen King's introduction, quote, I've always been amused, he's quoting Jack Finney, so this is a quote inside of Stephen King's introduction from Jack Finney, quote, I've always been amused by the contentions of people connected with the picture that they had a message of some sort in mind. If so, it's a lot more than I ever did, and since they followed my story very closely, it's hard to see how this message crept in. And when the message has been defined, it's always sounded a little more simple-minded to me. The idea of writing a whole book in order to say that it's not really a good thing for us all to be alike and that individuality is a good thing makes me laugh, end quote. Was Jack Finney being disingenuous? So this is me talking again in my essay. After Jack Finney's quotation, was Jack Finney being disingenuous when he proclaimed that anyone who had, quote, a message of some sort in mind, end quote, regarding the significance of the body snatchers were doing, quote, a lot more than I ever did, end quote? Does his statement, as quoted above, really mean that drawing parallels about the story was more than Jack Finney ever thought to do? Strictly speaking, that statement, as quoted, could actually be interpreted as meaning at least two, very different things. It could mean what Stephen King implies that it means, that we should be cautious and beware of the tendency to, quote, to read deep meanings into simple doings, end quote. That's a quote from Stephen King in his introduction talking about this, is there a metaphor or not? So Stephen King seems to imply that Jack Finney meant, I don't have a message, or let's not read deep meanings into simple doings, end quote. Or, back to me talking again, or it could alternately be taken to mean that Jack Finney is actually saying that making statements about what the message of the story might be is a lot more than I ever did, end quote. Quote, a lot more than I ever did, end quote. In other words, those who have given their interpretations have said more than Jack Finney has said. Or to put it another way, he isn't saying that he doesn't have a message of some sort in mind. He's saying that making that message public, making statements about that message is, quote, a lot more than I ever did, end quote, because he didn't want to say for whatever reason. He seems to say pretty bluntly that the interpretation that the whole story might be about the idea that, quote, individuality is a good thing, end quote, is simply laughable and wrong. But that implies not that the story doesn't have a deeper meaning, but that in fact it does. But what could that message have been? Stay tuned for the next part of my essay. Thanks for listening.